Hi, everyone. Welcome back to our 40th anniversary, which will consist also of 40 interviews of some very special people who have made Symphonicity what it is today. Joining me are two former board presidents of Symphonicity, Sue Grube and Hank Marriott. Hi, Sue. Hi, Hank. How are you?
Hey, Daniel.
Hi, Daniel.
It's so nice of you guys to join us in this anniversary season. Definitely challenging times. How are you doing, Sue, in the midst of everything?
Doing well. Everybody staying safe, staying secluded, but really miss the music and missing in-person concerts. So hopefully that will be on our horizon for 2021.
Well, Sue, many of us in the community are well aware of your hard work and efforts in the arts community to help everyone get through this. So we want to thank you very much for your continued service to the arts during this difficult time. And Hank, how about you? How are things going during these challenging days we've been dealing with?
Pretty much the same as Sue. Daniel, Charlotte and I have stayed indoors for the most part since I'm thinking March 13th or so. So it's been a long time. We'll go to the grocery store and those kinds of simple things. But like Sue, I miss the camaraderie, miss the entertainment factors, and just being out amongst people more than anything else. So.
I think Hank, with what you're saying, it makes me think about what it will be like when we're able to resume some of that normalcy, right, and have those experiences back in our lives.
Yes, absolutely.
And I'm sure some of that is what may have motivated each of you some time ago to get involved with Symphonicity. You know, that seeking that camaraderie, that community through music, and was wondering if you could share with our audience, Sue. We could start with you, since I think we have a neat history because you were the chairperson for the search committee that ended up hiring the new music director, which is me, and Hank was the I think the board president when it all got started, right? Just before the search got going, right?
Yes.
Yes. In fact, Hank was the person who asked me to chair the search committee. So it starts there.
I see. Well, that's a pretty neat full circle, so to speak. But so, Sue, how did it start for you personally with Symphonicity?
Well, it started over 20 years ago. I auditioned for one of the open flute chairs back in the fall of 1999 and was fortunate enough to be selected to play the third flute and piccolo chair, where I have sat ever since and have loved every minute. There is nothing for me that equals sitting in the middle of the orchestra during a rehearsal or performance. And that is one of the things I miss the most, is being in the middle and participating in the music. I moved from there a few years later to some board positions and chair of the board. Actually did two different segments of that, two different terms. So, but it all started by playing flute in the orchestra, and that is a chair that I hope to occupy as long as I'm able.
Well, you know, that's so interesting that being a member of the orchestra and then serving in all of these important leadership roles over the years with Symphonicity, what would you say is one of the unique perspectives that you can bring as an orchestra member, as a performer, to these leadership roles, such as on the board?
I think it's important for board members to understand what it takes to put on a production. And it's a whole lot more than anyone outside of the production can ever really understand in terms of preparation before you even get together as a group, whether that be certainly for the music director and all his preparation, but even the individual musicians before we get together, the individual preparation, and then everything that happens with the staging and the timing and all of those sorts of things. It is a real investment. And I think it's important to have board members who understand all of that. And I think it's important to have community arts leaders who understand what it takes for arts to exist in such a great way in our community.
Yeah, and it's very interesting to me that when I was interested in Symphonicity, to learn that it was essentially governed by the musicians in a very large part. And that's a unique aspect of Symphonicity in general. So to take that further and to know that our own musicians have really led the way in some of the key positions, of course, is really important. But it's not just our musicians. We also have our community members who have joined us along the way. Hank, when did it all start for you with Symphonicity?
Well, I was trying to think of the date of that when Sue said 2009 for her, I think, or a little bit before. I don't think it was long
99
after
was it,
that.
Sue?
Yep, 1999.
99, yeah. So it was probably 2008 or 9. And Sue, you probably, whether you remember this or not, but I was asked to give a presentation to the investment committee. We had been given some money. I'm not sure exactly how much it was, but it was a really nice sum to get started.
Hank, where were you at the time, by the way, just for our audience to know?
At that time, I was working at AMG National Trust Bank, and I've been a trust officer for probably 35 or 40 years by that time, working for a couple different banks. And that's something that Sue and I had in common because she worked at Continental Bank in Chicago. So we kind of hit it off, and she was a member of that committee. So I won't say it was love at first sight, but I could say it was love at first sight. So we hit it off well, we chatted, and so that was kind of my first introduction to the orchestra itself through that presentation. And then someone, I'm not sure who it was, I'm thinking Bill Hunter, asked me if I would join the board, and I said I would. And it's been that's kind of how it all got started. So yeah, and I realized Sue played in the orchestra too. So there was a lot of things to talk about, and she was a mentor for me, more or less.
So Hank, in your case, well, I was just going to say, Hank, in your case, to clarify, you became aware of the orchestra by invitation to participate with the board or some of the board activities. That was before maybe you were actually getting familiar with the orchestra through concerts and so forth? Yes,
as a matter of fact, I had never been to a concert.
How about
shame to say, but I'd never been to a concert. And of course, when you get on a board like that, should be a requirement. One of the requirements is to participate. And I found it very, very intriguing to also to bring clients, which I did, every time we had a concert. So it was a lot of good positive things going on there.
But anyway, I would just like to add, I just wanted to say that Hank's coming on board was a turning point for the board of directors, in that we were also at that point moving to the transition of moving from a small organization playing at the old convention center to moving into the new Sandler Center Theater. And we needed to have outside board members that brought other things to the table, such as financial expertise, legal expertise, marketing and outreach expertise. And we have been able to do that over time, and it's really changed the orchestra for the best.
That's neat, especially that, Hank, you came in at about the time that the orchestra was going through a big change with the Sandler Center, association as a residence member. And of course, as I've learned since coming here, that really had a big impact on Symphonicity. First of all, it was big inspiration to the players, but I think it also meant sort of new opportunities, both for growth and maybe new expectations that the organization could set. And you came in, were able to help with that. What was unique about coming in and working with an arts organization in this capacity, maybe compared to other things you've done before? Would you say that there are differences or anything unique about that?
It's totally unique. I mean, I hadn't had that much experience with nonprofits except through maybe the United Way and things like that. So this was just totally unique. And so, and Sue has been such an instrumental part of this whole thing, because she was there when they were moving to the Sandler, again, from the conference center down at the beach. Even played in some high schools, I think, auditoriums at some point in time. And then the name change from the Symphony Orchestra of Virginia Beach to Symphonicity. So she's really the historian in this whole thing, as young as she is, but she's really the historian. And that really made a huge difference in my life. But so kind of one of the highlights for me was I was Cheryl Ahern, I think, was the board president, or the person right before her, I think, was a board president when I came on board. And we used to meet in a big classroom, and it was, and that was a lot of fun. And I learned just by listening to what was going on in the meetings. I learned a fair amount about what was happening with the orchestra and how it worked and all that. And again, Sue's right. It's not just going up on the stage and playing. There's just a huge amount of logistical effort that goes into every concert. Both of you all know that much better than me, and much better than I. And that's another thing. So then Cheryl was the president, and one of her things was a strategic plan. And we had a meeting in October, and I can't remember the year, Sue, but and so I happened to be sitting next to Becky Brown, which was fortuitous also. So you know, Cheryl wanted us, and she brought in a consultant, I think, from the American Orchestra Guild or whatever it was. Anyway,
League of American Orchestras.
League of American Orchestras. Thank you. It's a national group. That lady basically kind of had a couple of points. One, we needed a strategic plan, 3 to 5 year strategic plan. And the other one was that we need a succession plan for our conductor. And so that all kind of went together in that particular plan. Becky raised her hand and volunteered. So I said, okay, I might as well do this too. So that's when I really kind of started to get into what we were doing, and then a kind of a more modern formulation of what needed to be done with the orchestra and the business side of the orchestra, because they were playing phenomenally, you know, and always have. So that was really where I got my feet wet there. And, you know, eventually that led to the succession plan and Daniel Booth, who we're talking to now, right? So.
Yeah, that's really neat that you were, wow. I mean, you were there at a major turn of the organization and helped steer Symphonicity through it. And Sue, you were right there along with Hank in another sort of, I guess, key counter capacity, in that you were leading the search efforts for the music director while he was helping get us to that point where eventually there would be some new plans made. You were actually leading the way with the search committee. Is that right?
That's right. Yes.
So can you tell us more about what was that like to lead a music director search, and particularly, you know, what was like for Symphonicity, because that's no small undertaking for any orchestra, let alone a community orchestra.
Right. It was a very involved 2-year process. And we had sort of been saving our money up to that because it was going to cost money, and we were able to fund that as we needed. But it goes down as one of the most meaningful experiences that I've ever had. We had a committee of 11 people, very diverse representation from every group of the orchestra, strings, winds, brass, and some community members who were not musicians bringing in input, as well as some retired professional musicians. And it was a group that really worked hard together. It was very dedicated. We had over 70 resumes come in to be reviewed and be considered. We were quite surprised by how much attention our posting received. So we were very excited about that. And we read every resume was read by several committee members. And one thing people may not realize is that with every conductor application comes video, conducting video. So we narrowed it down to maybe 30 people who we reviewed extensively their conducting videos, and that formed a number of decisions one way or another about conductors. And we got the group down to 12 people who we brought in for in-person interviews. And that was an important piece because at a certain point you're selling Symphonicity as well as interviewing conductors. And we wanted conductors to come and see the Sandler Center because that was a big piece, a big draw, the opportunity to play there with a full orchestra. So that was an important piece. And following the interviews, we narrowed it down to 5 finalists who over the course of the next season, each conducted a concert, which included coming into town for, some were out of town, one was in town, coming into town for 5 rehearsals and dress rehearsals, as well as meetings with community members, some of our donors, really a full view of the conductor. We saw input from the orchestra members as well as the audience members after each performance. And I can say that we did reach a unanimous decision at the end of the process. And there we have Daniel Booth, and really has been an extraordinary asset to the orchestra and is moving us in new and greater directions. So I will say that was, the director search was an important process, and we're really very pleased with how it went.
Well, thank you, Sue, for that summary, but also I'm thankful for the results, which bring me here today. Hank, what was it like on the other side, watching this unfold? I know at that point, I guess you had your term as board president had concluded, and it moved on to Rebecca Brown, right. Who I thought was neat when I was applying for the position, that I saw she was a colonel in the Air Force,
Yes.
retired. And of course, at the time I was active duty Air Force. So that was kind of neat. But that transition had happened. And meanwhile, of course, you stayed on board and assisted in your capacity as the past board president. What was it like to just see this unfold, and either from a community perspective or even from the board perspective?
It was, I was awestruck, I had to tell you. And one of the things that was going through my mind when Sue was talking was they met consistently was it Tuesday night?
Just about almost weekly, sometimes more.
Yes.
This was the search committee was meeting weekly?
Search committee, right.
Okay.
For months. I mean, it was arduous work, and I was just standing by watching it. We had some other issues and things that were going on too, but it was, that was just amazing. While the orchestra continued to play and do what it was doing extremely well, but just to watch that committee, and as she said, it was very diverse, but it was led like she was playing a violin, just perfectly. I know nothing about piccolo, so and even less about violins actually. But it really was well orchestrated, well done, and the result I think was just phenomenal. So, but Sue's always, again, kind of been my hero. I've never really said this to her, but she was always a phone call away. I always knew if I had a question or needed advice. She had the whole history on just about every personality in the orchestra and in the business side of it. And so it made my job extremely easy to be the board president. So it's just a wonderful organization.
You're very kind, Hank.
Well, and Hank, as I hear you describe Sue in that manner and then talk about the process, it just really underscores to me how valuable having long-standing supporters are for the orchestra. It's first of all, it's very valuable to have anyone walk through the door and say, I want to support your mission. I believe in what you're doing. And we need that support every day and every tomorrow. But there's also something very special about having the support that's been there for a long time, that understands the ins and the outs and the lefts and the rights to help shepherd us forward, even with that new influence, a new direction like you brought to the table eventually. So it's really neat to hear that, not only to hear describe Sue, but to appreciate how the two of you together, Hank, you brought in kind of a fresh perspective, an outsider's perspective in a way that was so needed in the organization. As Sue described, it basically didn't exist until that started to get going at that time. And then Sue, you've brought all of this history and experience and savviness, frankly, on how to navigate the nonprofit waters with the orchestra. And the two of you together have been kind of an example, I think, of what the Symphonicity team has become, because now we really are represented on both sides. If you look at our board makeup now, we have a number of wonderful professionals from throughout our business community that are involved in Symphonicity. We have numerous corporate sponsors now that have been supporting us. And of course, we still have many musicians that are involved, and some with some very sharp leadership skills that are aiding us. We have teachers, former superintendents of the schools, and everything else. I mean, such a neat variety that's all come together. But speaking of what I just was talking about with the corporate sponsorships, Sue, what would you say about that? Because that's a big part of any organizational goal of trying to build that support structure, right? And for a community orchestra, it's probably even a more challenging quest than for other groups that have a more professional foundation. But Symphonicity has this long-standing community-centric grassroots kind of foundation. How did you elevate that and then send that into a future that now has the enjoyment and support of many corporate sponsors?
Sure. It really sort of came down to that same critical time period when the city tore down the old convention center. We had a year of time with no theater, and then we were moving into the Sandler Center, which for Symphonicity meant we needed to increase our budget by 3 times. So that was very critical because it cost money to play in a beautiful theater, and we wanted to be sure that we could be there. And that was the point in time that we launched our corporate sponsorship program. And we will be, and I personally always grateful to PRA Group. They were our first corporate sponsor to step up and support us. And the critical part about that was once you have one well-known sponsor, it is easier to get other sponsors because they follow success. And that was like we had a stamp of approval which really helped us to expand that within the community. And we would not be where we are today without the support of the corporations in this area and the city as well. During that time when we did not have a home, the city did step up its financial support of the arts groups. And that was critical to actually have vibrant arts when we moved into the new theater.
Hank, what would you say is, what will be your pitch, if you will, to those who are less familiar with classical music and symphony orchestras as to the value that it provides to the community, and what maybe is the upside of corporate sponsorship for an organization like Symphonicity?
Well, I've said right from the beginning, and when I first got in, and I don't think I coined this, but I call it the cultural pearl of Hampton Roads. It is. It just, to me, it's a gem, because you get the highest quality entertainment, education value with your little synopsis that you do, and before the concerts and things like that. I think it's huge, and even some of it during the concert. Because it's the education value, and that was part of our strategic plan, is to the education part of it, part of our mission statement actually. So you get this high quality entertainment, education value. This highest quality is professional quality. I mean, I've heard that from just thousands of people, well, not thousands, but many people, for an extremely reasonable cost, right? So you've got this pearl, this gem. And so I just think, and then with the value of the Sandler Center itself, which is just one of the best places to play. Again, you've heard that from a lot of people. And then the orchestra, it brings a personality. It's hard to explain, but there's an intimacy and a familiarity, almost a family thing that I've not felt. And I know I've heard this from other people with other professional orchestras, not just locally, but other places. So again, I don't know what that intrinsic thing is that the orchestra and the people who play in the orchestra bring exactly, but you can feel it. It's in the air, it's in the energy at these concerts, and it's unmistakable. So and you coming in as the maestro, it's doing your pre-concert pieces. I think that was a good addition, and so it's just a phenomenal piece of entertainment at a low cost on a Sunday afternoon. And for me, it was wonderful because, I'd usually get there at 1:30 or 2 if I was doing something around the lobby to introduce myself or whatever. But then after that, I knew it was going to start at 3, and I knew it was going to end at 5, and you're going to get a boatload of entertainment in between. And it was just it's just a wonderful thing for this area. More people should come out and see it. I mean, it ought to have 1,200 people there every Sunday, in my humble opinion.
I think, at least from my experience with the orchestra so far, I think we could say if we could fill up that hall every time, I think we would have a very happy hall every time, because everyone that comes to the Symphony concerts feels and experiences what you've described, and they come back, and it's been really great. Has there been anything, Hank, that is any one event or several types of concerts that stood out, or a type of thing that we do, whether it's Messiah or the Lollipops or a certain kind of concert, anything that you recall that you really enjoyed especially?
Well, it's funny you mentioned it, because I love the Messiah. I've sung the Messiah ever since I was a kid. We used to listen to it on the radio coming home from church, the Mormon Tabernacle Choir around Christmas time or Easter. And so, George Frederick Handel's always been one of my favorites, one of the few that I actually know the music to. A little bit of it anyway. So, but I've only sung in one of those concerts, and I sat next to Ed Brown actually, because he and I were sang bass together in the church choir. But that was phenomenal to be a part of that. But I've enjoyed all the concerts. I've always liked them. I think the 1812 Overture, when you had the cannons and everything blowing up in the aisles.
Fireworks over the orchestra inside the Sandler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was that was a great way to end my first season. That was one of my favorites that I've had here. How about you, Sue? You've played hundreds of pieces with Symphonicity since you came, I guess, really just over 20 years ago. Anything that stands out? And I'm sure there's many actually, but anything that you'd want to share today?
Sure, there are many that stand out, and I would say certainly the Messiah every year, the privilege of playing the Nutcracker, which I do very much miss, and new works every time that we you've always wanted to play Dvorak's New World. Beethoven Ninth is always a thrill. And, I love being able to play those. And I just want to go back to what Hank said about the feeling that you get from the orchestra. And it starts with the individual musicians. We are all there because we want to be there. We're choosing to be there. And I think particularly after this pandemic, we are all going to really cherish being there and being able to play. And that starts with every single player sitting in those chairs. And then Daniel brings all of that together. And I just think that's what you're seeing and hearing and feeling when you're in the audience, is every single person on that stage.
Well, as you know, we say at Symphonicity, our mantra is we play for the love of music, but that's because we can. And that's because of your support, Hank, your support, Sue, and the support of so many in the community, because without it, we would not be able to play for the love of music the way that we do, and then to share that with our audience. So I want to thank you both on behalf of Symphonicity and all of our grateful patrons in the community. Thank you both for your service to Symphonicity over the years, and also for your continued dedication and support for our wonderful community orchestra. You mean so much to us, and we appreciate you. And also thanks for joining us today for this interview. It's been a lot of fun.
It has been. Thank you very much for putting this together. Good to see you.
Great to see you both, and thank you so much for having us. Thank you for doing this, Daniel. We appreciate it.
Yes.
Great. We hope to see you again soon.